Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Signs of the Time on a beautiful Thursday evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. We thank you for allowing us to come into your homes, your place of business, wherever you are. Thank you for allowing us to spend time with you tonight as we talk about the sign of the time. I want to challenge you right out of the gate, right from the start. Hit that share button. Hit that share button so that we can get our friends, our family, whoever we want. We need to get some people on here. For those of you that are on here, we challenge you to stick and stay with us tonight as we have a special guest tonight. Last night's show was awesome. We had a wonderful conversation with Dr. Stephen Gardner and Dr. David Walker as we talked about the book White Fragility. We talked about racism in America. And then, of course, Bishop S. Janine Hyman popped on, and we just went to an entirely different level once the woman of God got on and added that boost of passion. And it was just electrifying, full of vital information. I want to say good evening tonight to those that are watching live on YouTube, live on Facebook, watching the replay. I want to challenge you, do a watch party. Hit watch party, and once you do a watch party, it will invite others to come in. I'm going to do one right now. I'm going to do a watch party myself, and so that we can get some other people on here to just kind of bring us together so that we can discuss the issues. Listen, tonight, I also want to challenge you tonight that during the show, during the broadcast, as you get your comments, questions, concerns, or confusions, feel free to type them in the comment section. We'll be able to discuss it. We'll talk about it. Many of you that are here every night with us, you never realize how much value you bring to this broadcast just by your comments, just by your questions, just by you doing that. It just takes it to an entirely different level. So please ask your questions, place your comments in the box below. We'll pop them on the screen and we will talk about it. Be safe out here. The numbers are rising. This virus, people are everywhere doing their thing. Is like this thing. And it's funny, we do things and then we say, well, I'm telling you this virus, you're complaining about the virus and people not wearing masks and doing all that, but you're out doing stuff that you really don't have to do. Be safe. Be safe. Wear your mask. If you don't have to go out, stay inside. We need you. We need you. Someone needs you. Be safe. Wash your hands. Wear your protection, your mask, your gloves, whatever. Some things can just wait till later, my friends, because we need you. Be safe out there. With no further ado, with that being said, I don't want to really press the time tonight because I want to get my guest on with us tonight. He is a dear friend of mine, a dear brother of mine, one of those friends that, you have friends that you don't know how long you've been knowing them. He's one of those friends I probably have to sit down and figure out how long we've been together, how long we've been friends. He is the pastor of the Independent House of God in Crystal River, Florida, my dear friend and brother, Bishop Leonard T. Smith. Thank you for joining us tonight, Bishop.
God bless you, my friend. How you doing, Bishop?
If I were any better, I'd be you.
You did that, you'll be backing up, man. We're just happy to be on here with you, man. God has been great to us, and he's doing such a tremendous work in our lives and in all of our lives. And we're just so prepared for what God has got for us next.
What is the climate? What is the culture? What's going on down there? For those that don't know, I know where Crystal River is because it seems like I'm down there all the time. But tell us where Crystal River, Florida is, and then talk to us about the climate, what's going on down there in the midst of what's going on in our country.
Crystal River is the gem of the West Coast. It is where the manatees reside in the winter seasons. And so we're known for the manatees and for the scallops and the seafood on this end. And we're just excited just to be a part of what God is doing. God is doing such a tremendous shaking. I believe it's a shaking, and the climate here and the culture here is a climate of anticipation and expectation for what God is saying and even what God is doing. We're just like all over the world and all over the country. We're dealing with the disparity, economic, financial educational disparities as it relates to the African American job positioning, things of that nature. And in the wake of George Floyd, we're galvanizing as leaders in the community to try to confront the issues. Someone said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to get ahead of it with our leaders and civic leaders, social leaders, government leaders to try to head off and keep that thing from happening even in our city.
Okay. What's the situation of the climate in regards to the coronavirus in Florida, in Crystal River, which is about an hour and 15 minutes from Tampa, and everyone's noticing that the numbers in Florida is spiking. What's going on with that in your area?
Our numbers are pretty minimum here in Crystal River, while the numbers in Florida continue to spike and go up. And we just encourage people to be safe, to sanitize, to mask up. Don't go if they don't need to go. And I know most people are trying to get back in churches and things of that nature. But if it's not conducive or convenient, or if it's not safe, then we recommend that they stay home. And if they got to go, then we put protocols in place to make sure that social distancing is intact, and that people are sanitized, and that the building is sanitized, and things of that nature. And so here, the numbers are not as increasing as in other areas. I know Marion County, which is one of our neighboring counties, the numbers are continuing to go up. And we have not seen as much death and hospitalization, but we are tracking it to make sure that the people that are around us are staying safe and are practicing the measures that are going to keep them safe.
Do you see, Bishop, in your area that people have a tendency, if you said the numbers aren't as high in your area as in other areas, do you get a sense that when the numbers aren't high, that people kind of feel like, well, it's really not that bad, and they're out more? And
Well, I live in our county is more senior citizen retired.
okay.
And so we have a lot of elderly
Mm-hmm.
in our county. And so being mindful of that, I think people are, even though the numbers are not spiking and not really getting out of hand here, I go into the stores, I see people there masked up. I see the stores have made sure that the lines are at a safe distance. And every once in a while, you see people who are not adhering to that. And we do get relaxed because the numbers aren't as what they portray them to be. Or if we're just so adamant about our rights and our freedom uh, that, we feel that we have a right not to wear a mask, and that, we're not endangering anyone, and it's not as serious as CDC is portraying it to be. But we notice that throughout our country, there's over, I don't know the numbers now, but we're almost to 200,000 deaths. And so if people are dying, then it's real.
Yeah. I just received word too that the CDC has just put out a statement that they are now recommending. Don't know how many of you have actually heard this, but that they're now recommending that the social distance of 6 feet needs to be increased to 8 feet.
Okay, yeah. I seen that this morning when I was watching the news this morning.
Yeah.
They say the droplets can exceed over 6 feet.
Yeah.
And so, and not only that, but in certain areas here, they have already mandated in certain counties or certain areas, like Orange County, Osceola, Hillsborough County, they have mandated masks. And so it's required and mandated as law that they can't go into any facilities without the mask on. And so they can be barred or kept out or refuse service if they show up without a mask.
But yet you said that they feel like that's a violation of my rights to tell me I have to, like, I can't come into Dollar Tree. I know here in North Carolina, I've gone to quite a few Dollar Trees that have signs up, you can't enter without a mask.
Without a mask, yeah.
Although you go in there, people don't have a mask on because the workers are probably saying, I'm not going to fight you. But isn't it funny that we can say that if you put a sign up saying I can't come in the store because you're telling me I have to wear a mask, that's a violation of my rights. But that same store has always had a sign up that says no shirt, no service.
Right.
No one's ever argued over the fact that the store said you don't wear a shirt, you don't have on shoes, you can't come in here. But if they say don't wear a mask, now you violate my rights.
Exactly. And it's amazing that, one outweighs the other, because me, you're not wearing a shirt is not going to endanger anybody as far as their
Right,
health.
right.
But you're not wearing a mask, it will endanger other. And so if you're not really concerned about yourself, you have to be concerned about others.
Right, right. Bishop, one of the big problems that we have because you also mentioned, and I mentioned before about twins in America, a set of twins, the coronavirus and this racial injustice, racial tension that's in the nation, and that a lot of people, they're twins because a lot of people feel like neither one exists until they're affected by it.
Right.
Once they're affected by it, they believe. What is the racial climate in a small area such as Crystal River, Florida?
I think the climate is based on what is happening throughout our nation. I think the climate is matriculating to every city, every small town, every rural area, from the inner cities to the country towns. I think with social media today, I think it's becoming more prevalent, and it's becoming. I grew up in the '60s, so I'm a 1962 baby, and so I grew up during the civil rights. I went to segregated schools. The first 3 years of my education was in all black school. There are those in our day, generations in our day, that have not yet experienced that. And so they did not have firsthand experience of what it was like to be deprived of certain things, or to be discriminated against, or to have disparity. But when they see this happening, and when they see the things that are happening with our young black men and black women, and how the police brutality is perpetuating, and when now they look and when they see how the educational system is as it relates to African Americans in predominantly white areas, when they see how jobs are given or jobs are not being given, then they begin to understand the plight of racism or discrimination within our county, and it may not be it may not have been as bold as in some areas, but it has been subliminal,
Okay.
and we have begun to see it on a rise even now, as we were discussing on the other night. Out of all of the school systems in Citrus County, we begin to just brain surge and begin to see that there is no black principal or AP in none of the schools. And it's not that we don't have qualified young ladies or men who is highly educated, who is has all the degrees from masters to doctorates, who has not been given the opportunity to be a principal or administrator in our area. Because then the reality is that our kids go to school without being able to see someone that they can identify with.
Right, right. We talked about that. I believe it was Tuesday night, about how that can be a form of systematic racism because we're not giving them proper role models.
Right.
Bishop, so what is the role in history? You talked about the civil rights movement. During the civil rights movement, the church played a prominent role in the movement. With what's going on today, and you can address this either with the virus or with racism, or both. What is the responsibility of the church during these times?
I think the church have a great responsibility, that I don't think that they're aware of what that responsibility is. The church in our age now, or in this age, have become so spiritualized that they feel that they are excluded from what is happening in the everyday lives of people. And so we have made the church an inclusion as it relates to our worship, our songs, and the things that we consider as church. But the church has to be existential. They have to reach outside the walls. And when you look back in the civil rights movement and the things that were happening, the leaders of those movements were pastors and spiritual leaders that took the reins that would galvanize and begin to make change happen, who stood in march, who stood and spoke, who confronted the issues of their day. But I think this generation of church have become so spiritualized that they think their sole purpose is to come together, dance, shout, prophesy, and have a good time, and not be concerned about what is happening on the outside of the walls. I think, we have to shoulder a responsibility as spiritual leaders, as pastors. Number one, I think pastors has to galvanize, because when you saw the civil rights movement, not only did it consist of pastors, but it consists of community leaders, civic leaders, who, like John Lewis, a young man who played an instrumental part in the civil rights movement, and even Rosa Parks, who just sat down so that we might be able to stand up. And so I think, first of all, it starts with the pastors in the community that will see their responsibility not just as spiritual, but as social economics. And I think that we're so focused on the spiritual part of it that we don't realize that there's an existential part that we have to play as well, that will be able to touch our community. Because the reality is, if we come within the four walls, I just touch my members.
Right.
But if I go outside of the four walls, I touch my community.
Right.
And our gathering within the four walls is to inform our members and to give them direction how to affect their community.
Right. Do you think, Bishop, we were out of the church, outside of the church walls with this pandemic? Do you think we're itching to get back into the church so that we can strategize and go back? Or you think we want to get back so we can get back to church as usual?
Yeah, that, Bishop, is funny, because that was one of the things that was in my mind, even as I began to think about the conversation for today, is that the Bible says that the sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of times, so that Israel might know what to do. Okay. They were men who had discernment, or who had the ability to discern the times. And we know that discernment is the process of determining God's desire in a situation or for one's life. During this season, and I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget it. During this season, it seemed as though the church is desperately trying to get back in what God has called them out of.
Wow.
And I feel like that everything, we serve an intentional God. We serve a God of intentionality. We serve a God of purpose. God doesn't allow anything to just happen. Nothing, there's no incidents or accidents. There's no happenstance. Everything that happens by intent. And so I feel like, and I've seen this even from social media, and I watch people and they're like, I can't wait to get back in church. And when I get back in church, this time I'm going to dance. And this is what I'm going to do. And I begin to say to myself, the pandemic has happened, and we're facing the police brutality and all of the racial divide that we're happening in our country, that trickled down from 45 that sits in the White House, that trickles down from that. And there's so much divide, and most people, the only thing they can think about is how they're going to dance when they get back in the building. And God has always been calling us out. He called the children of Israel out of Egypt. Okay, he drew Moses out of the water. Okay. God has always been calling us out. And you got to understand the Great Commission was not to go into the church, but the Great Commission was for the church to go out into the world.
Wow.
And so I've seen, this, and I know people have just been so adamant and so bent on trying to get back in. And I think that we're missing the whole picture
Mhm.
of the shifting that God is doing for the body of Christ. And what is it that we're supposed to be doing in this particular time?
Bishop, that is good. That is very good. I was thinking about something while you were talking. You know, we mentioned it on one of the shows this week about how as African Americans or black, I don't know what we are, um, that we've been limited to success or the views on success because we've been programmed to think that our only our only usefulness, our only value, our only worth as a people is through entertainment of some source, whether it's athletics, whether it's acting, whether it's rapping. It seems like we tend to teach the next generation that that's the way to success is through entertainment. I thought about something while you were talking, and I was saying, wow, that was powerful. You know what you said about we're trying to get back into what God's calling us out of. Do you think we as a church, and I can only speak for us as the black church, do you think we're not successful because we too have been hung up on entertainment, that we've got to entertain God? That's why we say I got to get back in and dance.
Bishop, the greatest expression of worship is obedience, not performance,
Hmm.
not bodily exercise, not all of those things that we constitute as being spiritual. But the greatest expression of worship is obedience. Uh,
Hmm.
and God says, I do not delight in sacrifices and burnt offerings, or else will I desire them. But the sacrifices of God is a broken heart and a contrite spirit.
Hmm.
He wants he wants obedience over sacrifice.
Hmm.
And so many times we place sacrifice beyond obedience or
Right.
above obedience.
Right.
And so I believe that we're so um, into our giftings
Hmm.
and we're into our abilities as it relates to the performance of what we do in the building, that we don't hone into the skill sets and the abilities that God has given us. Because you have to understand that uh, most of the giftings that God has given to us in the earth is for the world.
Hmm.
We only exercise or we only promote the gifts that we can utilize within the walls. And so we promote singing and we promote preaching and we promote, prophesying and all of those things which are done within the walls. But there are gifts that God has given unto us as far as entrepreneurship is the gift. Behold, I will give you the power to gain wealth, the
Hmm.
ability. I will give you divinely inspired ideas. Okay. We serve the Elohistic God.
Hmm.
Okay. And God, the God who created us. And if the God that we serve is Elohistic, then we become Elohistic people. We
Hmm.
are created people. We have the ability to create. And everything that we have the ability to create is for the world, is for the earth. Okay, and so I think that we have publicized the operations of the gift within the walls, that we have missed out on the grander picture of what God has really given us the gifts for, is to touch the world existentially.
Do you think, Bishop, that we, personally knowing you and your style, you can hoop with the best of them, but before you get to the hoop, you're an excellent dynamic teacher and educator. And I always liken it to giving a good piece of steak, and after the steak, you pour the gravy or the inspiration on top of the information, and you are a master with the information, and then you will pour on the inspiration. Um, do you think that we're missing the mark because as the black church we have put so much emphasis on the inspiration the then we have the information, the basic. Are we not taught? So we think that it's all about my entertainment. Because you said you were in the 60s, you're like me, if a person doesn't get up and hoop when he's speaking, we call them a teacher, which is an insult, by the way.
Yeah. I think the African American church, the black church, have lived according to the stereotype,
Hmm.
of how preaching, what is real preaching, um, uh, how do we preach, and what system or what flow do we follow. And I think we live according to the stereotype, and a lot of times our members or the parishioners buy into the stereotype, and if there's no hoop, then they feel like there's no message.
Right.
But the thing you have to understand that uh, the God that we serve is a God of revelation,
Hmm.
because all information comes out of revelation. Because if you're giving information that has not been revealed, then it's just words.
Right.
But the revelation of God becomes the information for the body of Christ. And so it's not just enough to inspire if you don't inform,
Right.
because you can have inspiration without information. And then, the Bible said that bodily exercise profitable little,
Hmm.
but godliness is profitable unto all things, or God's message or God's word or God's values are profitable. And so if we're just inspiring, then people are leaving and they feel good for a moment,
Hmm.
but then as they go through the process of the week or the day, they're being bombarded by circumstances and situations that they have no substance to deal with.
Right.
And so, we have the dance, but we have no substance.
Right.
We have the praise, but we have no substance. And so the revelation is for information, and the information is for sustainability. Because how can you be sustained if there is no texture, no structure, nothing that holds you together?
Hmm. So the information is the steak.
Yeah,
The inspiration is the gravy,
it's the
but we
gravy.
need the motivation, which is the cutting of the steak
Yeah.
or
See, I
the
like mashed potatoes.
application.
I like
That
mashed potatoes, but sometimes they'll ask you, "Do you want some gravy on it?"
you want some gravy on it. Right.
Or the steak. Do you want some gravy? Do you want some sauce on it? And the hoop is just the inspiration. It's the thing that inspires, or uh, it's almost like a jackhammer, and you're breaking up the rocks.
Hmm.
Okay, the 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 inspiration, or the inspiration is the thing that shakes up what's of the substance inside of you. It's what Paul says to Timothy, to stir up the gift that is within you. The inspiration is the thing that stirs up the gift, that gives you the passion or the drive to begin to move into action. And so, yes, we have to inspire, but before we inspire, we have to instruct.
Bishop, one of the things that I mentioned the other night, I was talking about how John the Revelator said that, behold, I see a new heaven and a new earth. Right now, we're in a new earth.
Yes.
We're experiencing something totally different. From your perspective, and the reason I'm asking, we have our first question. Felicia Carter says, as a leader, what changes has taken place with your congregation during this pandemic that is working for you all? What are you doing? What changes have you made now that outside of the beautiful background changing behind you, whatever? What changes have you made that
Uh,
seems to be working? And let me add that. What have there been any changes that you had to say this isn't working?
I think the greatest change is uh, being able to galvanize the people to begin to move within their community. I think that's something that had been lacking, and I think that's something that is working now, because now they begin to get a greater sense of what their purpose is. because they're not able to come within the building. And because a lot of time people feel like their whole purpose from Monday through Saturday is to get to Sunday.
Right.
And to get to Sunday so that they can come to church, so they can be inspired and get a word that go back, from Monday through Saturday to the same norm. But this is the new normal. Okay. And because this is a new normal, it's causing people to have to operate in a manner that they have not had to operate before. It's challenging the giftings inside of them. And not only is it challenging them, but it's awakening the giftings inside of them. So now they have to begin to externally begin to use those giftings to now not just come into church, because a lot of time people feel like their only purpose is to come to church. And now that they can't come here, what do we do now? And I think it was a strategic plan of God. I think the Bible says, for all things work together for good to them that love the Lord and call him according to his purpose. And so I think, as I said before, that God is an intentional God. He doesn't do anything by accident. And so I think that this crisis, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's racial, George Floyd, I think that it came to a head for a reason, because I think God was trying to say something to the church that it's time to move.
Is anything didn't work for you?
Well, not as yet, except for this technology. Sometimes it break down and sometimes it don't work. But, other than that, we haven't done anything that we haven't seen that didn't work as of yet.
What kind of and again, those that are watching, please post your questions for Bishop. I'm sure he'll be glad to answer them. What has how have you had contact with the members? How have you had contact? What has been your relationship with them now that you're not seeing them sit there in the pews every Sunday and Wednesday night?
Yeah, just through communication, via phone or going by, just communication, being able to check on and see, or having my deacons communicate with them and check on them and make sure everybody's okay. As you know, my congregation, I have a lot of older members who doesn't feel comfortable with coming back into the facility yet, and with good reason. And so I caution them to stay away until they feel comfortable with coming back. And so we've been able to communicate with them, and I believe it or not, a lot of them have become technological savvy
right
during the pandemic, because a lot of them have had to come on Facebook Live and live stream us. And so even my mom, 82 years old, she live streaming and she on Facebook. And so I think it is awakened something out of the people to begin to utilize abilities they didn't think they had. And so they're still getting the word. We're still communicating. And so I think that was a positive as well.
What about Bishop? If I may ask you a question that a younger, well, I don't even have to say a younger, another pastor may ask you. What do you feel about as a pastor? If I say to you, my fear, I have a fear. My fear during this pandemic of being shut down is that the members that belong to my church are now sitting at home watching live Facebook of other pastors who are taking advantage of this opportunity to draw them in. They'll take advantage. I would say something, but I might get in trouble. But, well, it's my show. Some pastors are real sneaky. So there's some pastors that, target people anyway. Now I'm targeting you with my live, and my fear is that when we can get back together, I'm not going to have everyone that I had when we left. It's sort of like losing a sock in the dryer, in the washer, whatever, you lose it.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Losing a member in this pandemic?
Well, the thing you understand, people are either connected to your church, they're either connected to you, or they're connected to your vision.
Okay.
And if people still have access that love you, they're going to commit to you regardless of whether you're live be alive or you're there in person. If people are committed to their church, they may be committed to the church and not committed to me. And I can leave and they'll still keep coming here.
Right.
Because people are committed to their church, and then people are committed to your vision. And as long as you are working the vision that they believe in, they'll continue to follow you. But as soon as you stop working that vision, then people will begin to follow something else, because they don't necessarily believe in you. They just believe in your vision. Right. And so I think that if your people are committed to ministry or to the ministry where you are pastoring, and our first relationship, and I say this all the time, our first relationship is to God. And if our relationship with God is where it is, and we say that we are obedient to God, and this is where God says that we're supposed to be, then I think whether you're live or whether you're there in person, I think that people will continue to follow you. People who have other motives, I can say there's a fire down the street, and if people just want to leave, they're gonna go down the street and watch the fire burn. Right. And so there's really nothing you can do other than, because we're living in a unprecedented times. We're living in times that no one has ever seen or no one has ever thought we would see. And so I think we just have to be committed to, number one, to the vision that God has given to us, the mandate that God has given to us as pastors, and then continue to be committed to serving our parishioners, and even if it's through this vein, and even those that can come in and sit in. And then after that, and there's nothing much else you can do, because if people want to leave, it don't take much for somebody to leave.
They'll do that while you haven't. Right. During this time, the question by Diamond Destiny says, do you think people think this is the end of days, or are they just in the moment making it day by day? And it goes back to, are we fearful do you think people just saying, okay, this is the end, because that's all that you hear now? Yeah, this is it.
Well, we've been talking about the end for the last 100 years. I think I don't think that people, if people are radicalized, then those who are radicalized always think that this is doom and gloom and this is the end and this is the worst of times. I think that this is a transitional moment. I think this is a transitional moment. I think God is transitioning the mindsets of the people of God. Before he transitioned us naturally, he is transitioning us mentally. He's trying to get our mind to another place before he takes us to another place. And so I think this is preparing us for something that is greater than what we're experiencing or what we have experienced. And I think for every great moment that God is getting ready to take us to, there is a transitional period that he allows us to experience. So, I don't think that this is the end of days. And I don't think that it's just let's just go through this and see what tomorrow is going to bring. No, I think that God is doing something intentional. Okay. And I think as leaders, we should, a lot of time when crisis happen, people say, well, we need to come together and pray. No, we should have already been praying. True. Okay. True. We should always pray. True. So that we are open to hear the voice of God when he speaks. He that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. And you have to understand that there is a distinct sound or distinct voice that God is speaking. And you got to understand, he's just not speaking to everybody, but he is speaking to a select generals that are set in the earth to be able to make a declaration as to what the voice of God is declaring in this season.
Bishop, there is we know that there is a difference in someone that has the ability to prophesy and that person that is a prophet. And it's no doubt you have that ability to prophesy. You walk in that gifting. You hear a lot of prophets now, and I'm not saying what God has told them. Let me clarify that. I'm not saying anyone is off.
Right.
Everything seems to be either uh, financial wealth or prosperity, or doom and gloom. Is there a prophetic voice anywhere, including yourself, that understands that there is a time that God will speak and say to everyone in the midst of this storm, calm down, I got you?
Yes, I mean, even when you biblically, when you look back, where God begins to speak, even to Joshua, he says, "Stand still."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he even speaks to Moses. He speaks prophetically. Moses says to the people, "Stand still." You know, he tells Joshua, "Be thou of good courage, for the Lord thy God is with you." And so I think the prophetic voice is about direction.
Okay.
And it is the direction that is going to lead us to the destiny or the destination.
Mm-hmm.
And so many times, because we have itching ears uh, for one thing, from one extreme to the other, the one extreme is the prosperity, the glitter and the gold and the money coming.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the other one is you all going to hell and this is the end.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But you got to understand, but there is the prophetic voice is the direction of God.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just I see you coming on 100. I see you in a house with glass, ceilings, and and things of that nature, because we as humans, we become so galvanized and so engulfed by that this is what the people want to hear. And so to get an offering, we're telling them things because we're trying to get an offering, we're trying to get some money. And so yeah, you're gonna be a prophet, and yeah, I see you going to nations, and yeah, I see and things of that nature. But the prophetic voice is the direction of God, and it is God giving through the leaders, the generals, direction for the body of Christ as it relates to what we should. The sons of Issachar, I use that, and I say that again, were men who had understanding of times that Israel might know what to do. They understood the seasons,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so that they could instruct Israel
Mm-hmm.
as to what they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're missing in this day, is the true prophetic voice,
Mm.
the true prophetic voice. And it's not just the everything that glitters is gold, and money cometh, and you're getting ready to get 3 houses and things of that nature. It's about the direction of God. Where are we going?
Wow. Where are we going, Bishop? I mean,
You know,
I mean, where are we going? Where are we
yeah.
going? I mean,
When you look at it, Bishop, uh, Joseph going down to Egypt
mm-hmm.
uh, was about um, preservation.
Uh-huh.
Joseph going down to Egypt was about preservation. Moses initially going down to Egypt was about revelation. God wanted to reveal to him who he was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Joseph going to Egypt was about preservation. Moses going to Egypt was about revelation. Moses in Jethro's house was about preparation.
Right.
Okay, he was preparing him. And
Mm-hmm.
then Moses going back to Egypt was about emancipation. He
Mm-hmm.
was getting ready to bring them out.
Mm-hmm.
And then Israel going into Canaan was about residence.
All
And so
right.
you got to understand that every time that God moves us, he's moving us with intentionality. There's a purpose, there's a reason, there is a why. We're not just haphazardly going through life and going through events and dealing with certain situations, but everything
Mm-hmm.
that is happening, everything that is transpiring with the body of Christ, with the church, with Christendom, not the building, but the ecclesia. Okay, God is doing it for a particular reason.
Mm-hmm.
And just because we experience adversity and opposition, it is not an indication that we're not where God wants us to be.
Mm-hmm. Bishop, the question that's on the screen is one that I've asked before. Um, how can, during this pandemic, when our churches are closed, how do we deal with, you may have I don't know how many churches in Crystal River. If you have, just say for instance, you have 75 churches in Crystal River. If only two of them are open, the other 73, how do we deal with this word evangelism? Because the question that Diamond Destiny says, if there aren't many churches open,
Yeah.
how can someone bring their self to Christ? How can answer that question, but also how do we evangelize if we don't have any physical place to bring them to?
Okay. And I think we have to answer that question. We go right back to the Great Commission.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Great Commission? The Great Commission is not to come ye therefore. The Great Commission is to go ye therefore,
Mm-hmm.
and make disciples. He never instructed us to go. Jesus spent 99% of his time outside the synagogue.
Mm-hmm.
We spend 99% of our time in the building.
Right.
And so I think that the key to evangelism is to be a church without walls, is to get out into the community. I seen in Minneapolis, one of my good friends of his mother and his father, and worked ministry with them for years. Prophet Joshua Giles in Minneapolis. Revival was breaking out. They were baptizing people on the spot where George Floyd was killed. They had the big water cow trough, and they were baptizing people right on the street. Revival was breaking out. They had set up, and he was preaching and declaring the word of God, and people were coming to the Lord. I think that the revival in this day, against what people's popular opinion is, I think that revival of this day is not going to happen in the synagogue. The revival of this day is not going to happen in the four walls. I think the revival that is going to happen outside. And I think that's what God is calling us. And I think that's why we're dealing with the pandemic and, the racial tension, because God is trying to get the church outside.
But we're not paying attention.
In the world say, I want to go outside in the rain. It might seem crazy, and so we have to go outside. We have to go to where they are. We have to go and reach them, and we have to begin to declare the word to them. And as we're declaring the word to them, you go in places like Africa and places, like Haiti, where they don't have the fine churches like where people travel for days just to get to a service. Most time it's outside. And you have to understand that as believers in this day, I think that we have to go from beyond the rim of the building and reach out into the community and begin to touch people in that respect. And I think, and I believe that we're going to see revival break out like we've never seen it before.
The comment on the screen, Dartez Wright, says that in Deuteronomy, how God decrees that the Exodus generation must wander in the wilderness until they died, and only the children can enter. And he asks, do you think that's what's happening now? Do you think, you mentioned revival happening, you mentioned revival breaking out. Do you think that we're in the middle of experiencing something that is the beginning of the shifting from and I hate to say this generation that we're a part of, but from this generation to the next generation that's able to fulfill that revival? Because we have been so stuck more and more focused on a monument as opposed to a movement.
Yes, I think that the past generation, that's I don't want to say an age or whatever, but I think the past generation was religious minded, church minded. They were about the protocols of church. I think in this generation, it's about kingdom mind, and they're about kingdom work. And kingdom work is kingdom's about systems. Okay, whenever you think about kingdom, you think about systems. And when you understand that the kingdom of God is God's way of doing things, it's God's way of operating. And so the past generations were church-minded. Everything that they knew and believed, they thought about it in a certain pattern or a certain way. But the generations that are coming up now are more kingdom minded. And when you think of kingdom minded, you think about economic development. You think about educational development. You think of, entrepreneurship. You think of people being philanthropists, to where you're looking at government. You notice now Joseph goes into Pharaoh's camp, and he becomes one of the highest persons in the government there. Okay, Daniel even rise to levels of government. And so I think that this generation understands that the kingdom work is beyond what we do on Sunday.
Right.
And this generation, I think, understands that. And the past generation keeps trying to pull us back. And
Right.
even those that grew up under that stronghold, even though they may be my age, yet they're still trying to operate within that old mantle.
Right.
And like me, I'm just I'm just a radical mind. And so I think out of the box. I always tell people I don't know how to come out the box because I don't think I've ever been in it. And so when you have a kingdom mindset, then you begin to understand it's about your call may be to be in government, because you have to understand that whoever holds the power holds the key. Because when you look at our city, when you look at our government, people who sit in places of power, whoever has the money has the power. Whoever has the power holds the key. And so just because you've done something good in your city and they say, we're going to give you the key to the city, that key ain't real.
Right.
You ain't really got access to nothing. That's just a formality.
Right.
But when you have the money, then you have the power. And if you have the power, then you have the key. And so little gets done within our communities and in our cities as it relates to the Black community is because we don't have people in power.
Right.
Okay.
And right. Because, and if I have the key, not the key to the city, but if I have the power and the key, then I have access to the vehicle, and the vehicle doesn't care what color I am. The vehicle just says who has the key.
Right. Exactly.
And nowadays, and you look at the shifting in how things were then as opposed to how they are now. Years ago, if you had the key, you had to possess the key.
Right.
Insert the key. Now I can have the key and not be in the driver's seat, but as long as the key is inside the car, all that someone has to do is push the button.
Push the button.
So we have to get in a position of authority.
Right. Yeah, I mean, from school superintendents to school boards to city council to county commissioners, you have to understand that in order to affect change in your city, you got to be at the table where changes can be made.
But Bishop, didn't we think years ago, didn't the church's view, or I'll ask you, what was the church's view of the church dealing in politics?
We felt like that, we spiritualized, like I said at the beginning, we spiritualized everything. And so we really didn't see the purpose of being, we separated church from government. We separated what we do spiritually from what we do economically in our cities. And I think that when you look from Dr. King to John Lewis to this, I think the congressman or senator that just died on today. I think when we look at that, these were men who understood that though I'm a Christian, and though I'm a spiritual leader, the only way that I'm going to be able to affect my world or my community is that I have to be in a position where I can make changes.
Bishop, if I were to give you a microphone and say you can speak to the entire world what the Lord is sharing with you, what would you say? And I hope I'm not putting you on the spot by doing this, but if I just gave you the mic and said, look, man, speak to us. We need to hear your voice. What would you say to America, to the African American community as a seasoned general? You're not a novice. You're not a preacher that just came along in the last 5 years. You've been on the battlefield. You have the scars to prove it. What would you say to us during these dark days, during this hour?
I would say to every African American that we're living in the greatest time of the African American nation or the African American people. Um, there is a plethora of opportunities that is there for us to begin to seize the moment. Uh, we have to not so much focus on the grandeur of church and religion and the things that we have been brought up in to believe and to think, and not open our minds to an awareness of the bigger picture of what God has for us. We're becoming lost and in the promotion or the performance of what we do on Sunday. And I think that we have to begin to galvanize our people, our leaders, and begin to speak to the greater issues that are confronting us, so that we can begin to make something happen. It's time for us to not just talk the talk, but it's time for us to begin to walk the talk. And we've been preaching and we've been teaching, but now it's time for action.
Mhm. It's time for action. What would you suggest would be our first step of action? What would be the first measure? What's the first thing we need to do?
I think our first thing that we need to do is bring some solidarity within, if you're in a particular area. I think the first step would be to bring some solidarity within the leaders of your community, because where there is division, there is disruption. But where there is unity, there is strength, there's cohesiveness. And one of the major things that the enemy tries to do is he continues even to this day to divide and conquer. If he can divide us, if he can cast you on this side and me on this side and have us at odds at one another, then he weakens what we have the ability to accomplish. And everything that we are going to do together is a means to an end, what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that I would say to our leaders that we need to stop trying to be, great, because everybody wants to be the star of the show. Everybody wants to, be on the stage, and they want to be the person that's in now and all of those things, but it's not doing anything for our communities. And that's why we keep seeing, when I look on social media, and every day I just posted something the other day, because here again, this lady and her kids was in a pool, and here one of the hotel people wanted to know, did she have a room there? And the lady like, oh, yeah, stay here, and here's my key. And she calls the police on her because she wouldn't tell her what room she was in. I got a key. I'm on vacation with my kids. We're here on business.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is just something that keeps on happening perpetually. And we have to begin to stand up as leaders, but we have to be together. You can't go to the table divided.
Right.
You understand? Because a lot of times, one go to the table and he got an agenda, and then somebody else sneak to the table the next day because they got an agenda. But if you're going to go to the table, you got to go to the table together, and you got to say, this is what we want.
Right. Do we know what we want?
We know what we want, but you got to know. And that's why I said, as leaders, we got to have solidarity. We have to sit down at the table. And yes, sometimes you got to agree to disagree. Okay. But the bottom line is, what is it that we want for our community? Okay. Not just what I want for my church. Y'all got any funds down there for my church? Y'all got any, but and that's a lot of time what it is. What people are doing things, especially pastors, are doing things that benefits themselves. But what are we doing to benefit our community?
Right.
And so we have to begin to say, as leaders, and sit down at the table together. Before we go to that table, we have to come to this table and decide what we want. Just like a husband and wife, before they go down to buy the house, they need to sit down at their table and decide what they want. Because you can't get in there and you start saying that you want this, and so she's saying, well, we ain't talk about it at a house, And so you got to come to the table and say, what you want together. And then when you go down there to the city, you say, this is what we want. We're here for the people. And then you also have to meet with the people, because you can't be a voice of the people if you don't communicate with the people.
Right. Right.
You know.
So we'll march. We'll have our group of 4 or 5 pastors, and we have a nice photo op at the table with 4 or 5 white pastors, and we're sitting there talking about, we're ironing out our differences, but we haven't included the community. And one key factor of that, we haven't involved the younger generation.
Right, exactly.
They're either going to benefit or suffer from what's discussed at the table.
Exactly.
And they have ideas just like we do.
Yeah, exactly. And so there are different demographics that you have to begin to deal with. You got to find out from the young people, the young guys that's on the street. What is it that you want to see? You know, you can't expect them to go to the 9 to 5 when, you know, they can make in one night what you make in for a whole year.
Right. Right.
You got to say, okay, what is it that y'all looking for y'all community? Let's talk about it. And so a lot of times we just dismiss them because they're out there doing what they're doing, and we don't want to communicate with them. But sometimes you got to bring them to the table.
Well, do you think that's because, you know, you're talking about representation, holding office? Do you think the older generation gets intimidated by the energy of the youth, and they feel as though young people don't know, they're wet behind the ears and they don't know anything, and yet we have our representation? Anytime you have county commissioners or you have mayors, whoever, that are in office 30 and 40 years,
their mindsets are outdated. And it reflects in what you see in your community or what you see in your county. You see outdated things. You don't see, when you have younger mindsets in government, when you have innovative mindsets in government, then you begin to see things, because the old mindsets just, you know, while we can respect the mom and pop businesses, but yet enterprise, you know, deals with, you know, driving in or bringing in companies that are going to employ individuals and give them gainful employment. If you keep that out, then the youth, they grow up, they go to school, they graduate, and they leave. If they don't have uncles or aunts or, you know, parents in the school system or in government, in places where they're promised a job when they go to school and come back, our kids are not afforded that.
Right.
Okay. And so you get a lot of them who have, you know, friends of friends who are in powerful places, that once they graduate high school and go to college, they're promised, when you graduate, you come back here, you're going to get a job and you're going to have a career, and you're going to have a wonderful career. But the African-American kids, they're not promised anything. And so because there's no promise in their community, once they graduate high school and go and get their degrees, you know, and graduate from college, they stay wherever they graduated from, because there's more gainful employment, there's less biasness, and they're able to get the jobs they want. We have 2 teachers that are wonderfully educated, okay, who have all the credentials that is needed, who had to go outside their district, outside of this district, to be recognized as principal. When in this county, they had all the qualifications, but have not been recognized even to this day to receive, you know, a principal or a AP job in this county, out of all the schools that we have. But they have the credentials. One is getting ready to have a doctor's degree in just a little while. The other one have master's degree. You know, one of them have submitted resume for 15 times and have not yet been recognized.
No answers.
And so that's a travesty.
No answers as to, are there no answers? I mean, no one is answering, why is this happening?
Yeah, we're hiring from inside, or you know, they were best for the job, or whatever the case may be. But you got It's sad to say, but they can use us to train them for the positions, but not give us the positions. And you see that in every entity
Right.
in America.
Right. Everyone.
We can train you, but we can't have the job.
Right. We can be your friends, but we can't marry you.
Yeah.
You mentioned that in our closing, because we've been on here over an hour. Time really flies.
Oh, wow.
And you had a lot to say.
I didn't think I could talk that long.
Yeah, you can. I know you. You can. You talk to the African American community. If you had the floor, what was what Mr. Leonard T. Smith was saying. What is Bishop Leonard T. Smith with this prophetic eye? What is he saying? What would he say to the church in the middle of this double-sided hit of racism and this virus?
The bishop would say, well, we're living in a transitional period where God is commanding us to go to the other side. And while we're in the process of going to the other side, we are experiencing some turbulence, some adversity. And our first thought is to turn around or that we're in the wrong place. But God told me to tell you that you're right exactly where he wants you to be. This is not an illusion. This is not a distraction. This is intentional, and it is designed by God, and God has placed us where we are, because everything that God is doing in this season is about positioning. And where God has you, he has positioned you there for a particular reason. And so we have to begin to understand that we're not in trouble. We're in transition.
All right. All right. My friend, I thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really enjoyed this conversation. As I said, we've been on over an hour, and I've enjoyed every single minute of it. Our conversation, just powerful and enlightening. I'm sure that those that are watching would agree that you really blessed us tonight with a lot of nuggets, man. I'm telling you, Crystal River is better for having you down there. And
Amen.
I really appreciate.
Amen. We're just glad to be on here with you, Bishop. You know, when we get together, it's always a great time.
Yes, sir.
We hadn't had you down here in a while. Got to get you back once the.
I ain't coming down anytime. I ain't coming down anytime soon.
Once the corona is lifted and we get back to some type of normalcy, but we're excited. Listen, if you want to support this man of God, you can support him. You can support him at just the inside joke. You know, at $ Eagle Austin. Come on, you can sow and support.
Everybody say, "What are you laughing at?" It's just a inside, you know.
It's an inside joke, y'all. Don't pay us any mind.
Man, thank you.
Support him at Eagle Austin. Amen. $ Eagle Austin. That's his cash app. Be a blessing to this broadcast. He is doing a tremendous work. He's my friend, but he's also my brother. He's my comrade. We've been on the battlefield together for a long time. Met him so many years ago. I think I rode his back one time when I was preaching.
You know what you did. I forgot all about that. Yeah. Bishop preaching. Let me share this with you all before you go. Bishop Leonard T. Smith's nickname in preaching is Luke Chairwalker. Because when he starts getting riled up, he will walk the chairs. And so he was preaching one night and he was walking the chairs, and somehow or another he left the chairs and jumped on my back and started riding my back. And so I want to say something so bad. Can I say it and not get it?
Say it.
Those of you that are watching, please don't judge me for what I'm about to say. Forgive me. I love the Lord. But I can imagine that night when he was preaching, he's walking the chairs. He's got his microphone and and Bishop is walking the chairs. He's stepping over chairs and he jumped on my back and I'm walking around with him on my back. I can imagine somebody saying, "Who that nigga on that nag?" Man, I appreciate you, man. You were very enlightening tonight. You really inspired us on a church level and on a level as relates to who we are as a people. And that's what we need. We need to bridge the gap, merge the two, and then we can come out of this thing.
Amen.
Would you come back in the future? We get some time and come back?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Most
All right.
definitely.
All right. We're going to set that up real soon.
All righty.
All right. Thank you, my friend.
God bless you, Bishop.
All right. Bless you. Want to thank Bishop Leonard T. Smith tonight for joining us. Want to thank him for his contribution. I'm going to tell you, that was a powerful show. As I said, he merged the gap between both the church aspect and us as a people, as humanity, and what we deal with. And we need quality, qualified voices. And tonight we had a quality, qualified voice on tonight. He inspired us. He inspired us. He said some things that really hit home with us. I think the last thing he said was that we aren't in trouble. He said we aren't in trouble. He said we're in transition. That's key. We aren't in trouble. We're in transition. We aren't in trouble. We're in transition. I normally don't ask you to do this, but I'm going to ask you to do this tonight. I normally don't ask you, but I'm going to ask you to do this tonight. You ought to type that in the comment section, as someone already did. We aren't in trouble. Too often, as we talked about tonight, the word that we're getting puts us in a place of fear. Watch out, y'all. Doom is coming. But God isn't trying to scare us. He's trying to comfort. Watch what David said. He said, thy rod and thy staff, thy rod, the thing that protects me, the shepherd's rod that protects and leads and guides, his staff, the thing that he can beat off animals with. He says, it comforts me. What we're going through, a word like we got tonight from Bishop Smith, didn't come to beat us down and to make us go hide in a corner. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be one of those people whose hearts are failing me for fear. I want to be like the bishop said tonight. God's word ought to comfort, because we are not in trouble. We're in transition. It's how you view it. How do you view it? And the man of God blessed us tonight, and I appreciate him coming on tonight, taking time out of his schedule. You all just don't know, a preaching machine, a preaching icon he is, but took time out of his schedule to come and sit and talk to us and laugh with us and show us that there is hope. As I always say, if ever you get to the point where you feel like nothing's going to change, it's going to always be the same, it's going to get worse, don't get out of bed in the morning. Just go to bed tonight, just sleep to the other side. But if you believe that there's a God that's going to get us through this and out of this, then you ought to get up saying, God, I'm awake this morning. What is it that I need to do to make sure that the fulfillment of your word comes to pass, and that I can help somebody while I pass this way? Because we're not in trouble. We're in transition. Support us. We need your support. We're going to keep coming back. We're going to keep coming back. If I got to get out here and sell donuts with a mask on, I'm going to sell a crispy Corona cream donut. I'm going to write the word Corona in between crispy and cream. We're going to do it, but we need your help to be on here and to stay on here. There's the Cash App on the bottom of the screen. You'll see Eagle Austin. I know it tore him up to read that word Eagle, but Eagle Austin on the bottom of the screen. My friends, I appreciate your support. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your involvement. This show flows not because you're on here watching, but when you interact. That's why I get quality people on here, because I don't want someone on here that when you ask a question, they're sitting here saying, I don't know. No, Bishop Leonard Smith knew what God has shared with him tonight. And so we're going forward because of great men such as Bishop Leonard T. Smith. Well, we've got to go. We've been on here quite a while tonight, and I've enjoyed our conversation with the bishop, and I've also enjoyed our time with you, talking with you. I don't do this to get my face out there. I do this for you. I do this so that you can be well informed of what's going on in our world, and so that we can follow the sign that God is giving us. Bishop Leonard T. Smith tonight was a sign. You don't go anywhere in a car. I don't care what the GPS is saying. You're going to look at the sign to make sure that the GPS is telling you the right way to go. Bishop Smith is a sign tonight. When you go to bed tonight, I do need a favor from you. I do need a favor. Hit the share button. Hit the like button if you're watching us on YouTube. Create a watch party. Let's involve other people so they can know where we're going. Share it. Watch party. Tag your friends. Tag your enemies. Tag your next door neighbor. Tag the dog. Tag your cat. Tag somebody that moved away and you never heard from again. Tag them. They may pop up and say thank you. Do something. Get this word out here tonight. And when you go to bed tonight, look yourself in the eye in the mirror and ask yourself, today, did I do something, just one thing, to work toward my destiny and my purpose, to make sure that the world is in a transition and not in trouble? Or did I just sit here and waste another day? Tomorrow is Friday. Don't waste any more time. I love you. There's nothing you can do about it. And I'll see you tomorrow right here on Sign of the Times.